Good morning, and welcome to our 2026 series of WTH webinar training sessions. We're glad to see so many of you joining us for our second series. My name is Leslie, and I will be your moderator. We invite you to navigate to our website, WTHGIS.com, and click on the banner, which will take you to our webinar menu page, where you can review the topics we are to cover today and on future dates. We're doing something a little different with our first 3 sessions this time, as we plan on breaking down our topics into 3 one-hour sessions. Within each hour, we will be presenting for 40 minutes. During this time, we invite you to post questions in the Q&A tab. We will then use 10 minutes at the end to review any further questions, and then wrap up with a 10-minute break before we return for the next hour. The topic of our first webinar in the series is Think GIS Basic Functions, which we will break down to cover toolbar buttons and map frame features in the first hour, customization within the index and layer settings in the second hour, and lastly, the importance of syncing. If there's anything that isn't making sense to you or you would like more information on, we invite you to post a question in our Q&A tab that you can access in the Teams toolbar above. From there, you can submit a question in the side discussion bar. After we are done here today, you will receive an email that will have 2 things. First is a survey link where we ask that you provide feedback on how we did here today. On that survey will also be a section where you can request more in-depth training on some features we may not have time to cover in today's session. If you would like more information, please leave a brief description of what you would like to review so we can have the appropriate team member reach out to you. The second thing to watch for in that email will be a link to a recording of today's session. We've had some users unable to access the link in the past, so we want to be sure that you know the link will also be available on our website webinar registration page to access at any time, to bookmark and review at your own pace, or to use as a tool when training new employees. Now I'll turn the session over to Jason. Jason is a GIS consultant and customer service tech with over 20 years of experience, specializing in land information and utility work. Go ahead, Jason.
Good morning. So yeah, as Leslie said, I'm one of the service guys, and many of you have probably spoken to me before or met me over the 23 or some odd years that I've been here. But yeah, today, kind of first session here, we're going to be talking mainly about the toolbar and just some of the ways it can be customized and used. So I guess first off, we're just going to bring up the map and just kind of essentially this toolbar across the top. We're going to kind of just go over that, what the buttons are, what they do, how to customize it to work best for you. And as you see, you may notice that, I've got a ton of buttons across here. You may not have some of those. You may have some of those. You may have different ones that I don't have. It's, like I said, customizable, all along lines of what is going to work for you and what you need. So first off, just kind of going across the top, we do have kind of on most people will have the index. And just click this. You can look up information, everything, and we will kind of get into detail in the second session on this one because there's a lot of things to go over in this particular area. So I'll go ahead and close this for now. Next over, like one that I have is just select feature. And what it does, and say you may or may not use this much, but if I left click, it puts a little question mark on my cursor, and then anything that I click on. So if I just click here, it selects that feature and opens the feature window. And so if I close that, that would be the same as whereas a single click puts information in the information window along the left-hand side. but the double click opens up the feature window. This is essentially kind of a shortcut to a double click. Um, you may not use that a ton if you're kind of in an office setting and using a mouse. Um, I think a lot of people that are kind of in the field on laptops using the touchpad may use that a little more. So being that I'm primarily using a mouse, yeah, I don't use that one all that often, but yeah, but it can come in handy for those that need it. Next over, we kind of get into the navigation tools. First off, kind of the magnifying glass plus and minus, zoom in, zoom out. The zoom out is just a left click, and it zooms out a certain amount. And that's what it does. That's all that it does. Just, left click, it zooms out. Next over is max view. That will always take you to your default view. And that can be, and we will go over this in a little bit, but that can be reset. So if you need it to, every time I click max view, and for my default view, if you need it a specific area, you can set it for that. Or if you need it for the entire county, you can set it for that. And that will also be, the max view will also be the view that is used when first opening the map. So it will always go to that. So that, very easy to set that, and you can change it around as needed. And it's not going to hurt anything. Next over here, we have the zoom in button. And for this one, it's going to be a little bit different. If I left click, and as you see, you kind of get a window around my cursor. This window is it's going to have kind of the same general dimensions as your viewing screen. And anywhere that I click is going to basically put what's in there in your viewing screen. So if I needed to zoom in here, left click, that is now my viewing area. I can also use my scroll wheel. I'll move over here so you can see it a little better to resize that window. So I can, use the scroll wheel, scrolling forward, scrolling backwards. If you don't have a scroll wheel, or you're using a laptop with a touchpad, you can use page up and page down on your keyboard. That will do the same thing. But like I said, just zoom into an area that you need, left click, and there you are. Other options for this, like if I go back to max view, takes back to our default. Other options would be just, especially if you're using your mouse, the most common would be just left click and hold. So if we needed to zoom in this area right here, this would be a left click and hold, drag a window. And once kind of whatever I want to see is in that window, release, and it zooms in. So that, like I said, that is probably the most commonly used method, especially if you're using a mouse and you're in the office and everything like that. So max view. So if we needed to zoom in anywhere, left click and hold, drag a window, and you can just keep doing it until you find what you need. Next over is the previous view button. The previous view button will remember the last 6, 7 to 8 views that you have looked up. So if you like left click, it's going to remember all of the zooming in and zooming out that I've been doing. And I can just, keep going in and out, clicking that until now it has run out. But it'll remember if it could go back any farther, it would probably be zoomed way out to where we could see, the whole county. But once it's run out, you know, it doesn't do anything anymore. But what that can be used for, or what I use it for the most, I guess would be is sometimes if maybe there's a little lag in the map or anything, and I start zooming in, I may, whereas I said you just kind of left click and hold, left click and hold. If you maybe drag a tiny window and you're going really fast, you may end up doing something like this, where you are zoomed in so far, like we are really close to the ground right now. And if I use my scroll wheel, I can start rolling back. And as you see, we're not getting very far, but I can hit previous view. It's like now we can start seeing the pixels of the aerial photography, hit it again, and we're back. So that can, that's what kind of bails me out whenever I get in a hurry or, release the left click too soon and end up zooming in really close. That's when it comes in handy for me. But it can also, come in handy if you have, done an address lookup and then done another address lookup. And you're like, say, I need to go back to where I just was, as opposed to, typing in the address again, you could just hit previous view and it would take you right back to it. Next over, we have the pan button. And this would, at least for me personally, would be another button that I would say falls in with the, select button here. When if you hover says display, info for the object that you have clicked on. With pan, what this does is if I left click to activate the tool, it's very similar to zoom in that I get a window around my cursor that's the same size as the viewing screen. So with this, anywhere that I left click on the screen is going to make that the center of the viewing screen. So if I was going to, if I needed to pan down the road here, I could just left click on this intersection and it shifted the map to that location. So that is now the center. So if I need to move kind of west down, looks like North Street, I could hit pan, left click here, pan, left click here, and it's just going to keep shifting the map to the west. And again, this comes in handy more for those that aren't using a mouse. If you're using a mouse, what you would do here is, whereas like left click and hold drags the window to zoom in, right click and hold grabs the map and you can just drag it around. So this is going to be, as long as you're using a mouse and everything, much quicker and easier. And if you're using a touchpad on a laptop, you can, hold if you're more, if you're better with the touchpad than I am, then you can, hold the left button and kind of use the mouse or use the touchpad at the same time. And you would get the same thing. So right button and then touchpad would drag the map. Left button and touchpad would zoom in. Oops. And there I go, hitting the scroll wheel instead. And that is one other little handy tool that I think a lot of people don't necessarily know about. But if you press and hold the scroll wheel, which I just did on accident, but I guess I can show that to you. If you press and hold the scroll wheel, it changes your cursor to a marker. And you can draw on the map. These lines cannot be saved, but they will show up in prints. So if you're printing out an area for somebody and need to say, hey, check this area, or, we have a problem right here, or, this is the parcel I'm talking about. Yeah, you can just press and hold the scroll wheel and it will change your cursor to a marker and you can put those lines out there. Then from there, just a redraw of the screen, or I can hit clear at the top of the information window, and it's going to get rid of those lines. It would be like, clearing out if you've used the ruler, which we'll get into shortly, or any of the other tools that highlight things, that, you can redraw the screen, and it will wipe those out. So again, if we needed to, do a printout and say, hey, check this parcel out, just press and hold the scroll wheel, circle it. You could, make a print of this area. And then once you're done, clear, and you're back to where you were. So next over here is, we have the layer settings, which again, we will get to in the next session, because it's, again, kind of like the index. There's a lot to go over in that one. But so we'll just keep moving along down the line. Next here, we have the ruler for, measure distance. So if I left click, that's going to kind of change my cursor from the arrow to a little hand. And anywhere that I left click, and it's just a left click, I don't have to left click and hold, but it's just one left click, and it kind of anchors that point to the map. So now as I move the cursor, it's stretching out this ruler, and it gives you the length that it gives you the distance of what we're currently measuring. So if that's all we need, I can just left click, anchor the second point. If that's all I need, then I'll right click, clears the cursor of that tool, and it leaves behind that measure line and the distance. We can also, here I'll right click and hold and pan the map down. We can also not just do kind of, I guess you'd say, distance between A and B, just 2 points, but we can left click multiple times. Then right click to finish, and it gives us the total of all of the points that I put out there. And then again, kind of like with the press and hold the scroll wheel, I could just hit clear, or you may have a redraw button at the top, or I guess the hotkeys on your keyboard would be Alt R. So all three of those will do exactly the same thing. It will clear your screen. It will redraw the screen. Another feature on the measure tool is if we had to measure this section of road, I can hit the ruler, and maybe I start it for any reason I needed to know how far it is from this house in the center line of the road to the middle of the intersection going down the road. So what I can do is just left click to anchor a point on the road, and then any of, kind of see where the road bends. If I hit S's and Sam on my keyboard, we'll see the vertexes. And those are, sometimes we'll call those snap points. That's basically, as this was being drawn, and this is on every layer, that is where somebody left clicked to anchor a point as they were drawing. So with the ruler, once you activate it, if we needed to start here, what we can do is go to the next vertex. And if we hover over that, you'll see it kind of grabs onto it, and there's a little box around it. If we have that little box, we can left click again, which says basically we grabbed onto that vertex. So now, still using the ruler, if I come to another vertex down the road, you can see the ruler automatically grabs on and attaches itself to that center line so that we can hit left click, right click to finish. And now we know that it's 524.7 feet with what I measured. That is, maybe a little quicker and easier than like if I clear and coming up here and just clicking a bunch of times down the road, which, we can click all these times. Like saying I probably used a different starting point, but we're going to have, 533.5 that time. And then again, clear or redraw to clear your cursor. So, and that can be done, in different ways. One thing to, I guess, pay attention to if you are getting a measurement, if it's a really big area and maybe it crosses other intersections with lines and everything, you may get a time when, I don't know if it will do it here, but if we grab there and then, so it did actually snap on, but it may from time to time come down here and it may choose a different path. Like it may come around there. So you may be trying to measure from here to here and it may loop around some of the parcels. Just pay attention to that, and so that you don't get a bad distance or a measurement, and you can kind of just go from there. And then again, clear or redraw to wipe that out. So the next one to go over, which kind of falls right in line with the measure tool, the ruler, would be this here. Kind of looks like a grid with the corner cut out. This works just like the measure tool. However, if we left click to anchor a point, left click to anchor another point, we get our line. But if we pull the cursor down, we can see it's actually measuring the area. So if I just, click a few times, right click to finish, we have our area. This is 1.2 acres, 52,269 square feet. But yeah, this can be, used for, anything that you need the area on. I know a lot of, from what I've heard, like in the utilities and like highway departments and everything, if they're doing like a resurfacing project, they may say, oh, we need to do, X amount here. They could just kind of come down the road, measure back to the side, get the square footage. And I know there's a kind of an equation they multiply on, 5,779 square feet, and they can, use that to get, depth to help kind of get an idea of the amount of materials needed. But again, we'll hit clear and wipe that out. And those would be for, the ruler for distance, and then the measure area to get your square footage and square acreage or miles, depending on how big it is. And then along those lines as well, if you do have a parcel that you need just quick information on, you can also double click that parcel, hit the wrench, and hit display feature statistics. That will also give you your square footage, acres, and miles. And then the distance around the perimeter. So for anything that's drawn as an area, you can do that as well. Again, I will hit clear to wipe out the highlight marks. So next over, I have a couple buttons here. First one, mine is just kind of the cursor, an X, Y, and a question mark. Some of you may have that button. Others, it may be a button with a helicopter on it. They are both the same thing. So if I left click to activate that tool, come down, and then anywhere that I click on, it's going to give me the latitude and longitude in 6 different formats down the left-hand side. And this, yeah, anything that you need it for, and then whichever format you need. If you have trouble with that, or just feel free to give me a call. As always, anytime you have maps or questions with the maps, yeah, call in, let us know, and we'll be happy to help. But yeah, just anywhere. I know that a lot of times, especially like 911 and everything, this button will look like a helicopter. Um, I think for kind of lifeline situations, if they need a helicopter to come in, there's I believe, a process they go through that, they could click out in the field, say, yeah, this is an appropriate place they could land a helicopter, and, they can radio in the coordinates, whichever format they need, and the pilot can fly straight there, maybe shave off a little time. Yeah, anything to help. Um, Then the opposite of this, I'll hit clear again to wipe those points out. The opposite of this would be right here. And this is locate a point for the coordinates you enter. So if you have coordinates, or you've gotten some latitude and longitude on your phone, or a GPS, anything, you can enter them here. And it will give you, kind of zoom in and give you the X on the map, kind of just like when we did the lookup here. This tool will put the X on the map of the coordinates that you keyed in. If you, like I said, there are multiple formats. If the coordinates that you're given are in, degrees, minutes, seconds, then you would fill this out here. If they just give you degrees, you would fill out degrees, minutes, and seconds, you would put in zeros. Yeah, if it only gives you degrees and minutes, then the seconds you would just enter zeros. If it's more of like the northing and easting, kind of like just degrees, we would need to switch the format. And so like right here, I'll just choose, just one of the state plane coordinates, and now we have northings and eastings that we can put in. But as always, if you have trouble with this or can't get it to do what you need it to do, give us a call, let us know, and we can help out. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, with the kind of customizing, or the customization of the toolbar, we can kind of set things up in different ways. Whereas I mentioned that many of you will have a redraw button. Redraw, like, as is listed, like under view, like in your kind of your main menu items up here, we have view, redraw. That is going to be the same, like I said, as the clear button. But any of the tools that are up here, like here's pan view, that's the same as pan down here. Even, look up, locate points for coordinate you enter. That's the same as this. These buttons here are essentially hotkeys, or just shortcuts to the tools in these menus. So if there's a tool that you're using quite a bit, like right here under File, we have Save, Synchronize, which synchronizing we'll get into in the third session today. But if you just, don't necessarily want to go to File and Save, we could set up a shortcut button here for Save. The hotkeys for that are also, whereas redraw was Alt R for save, it's Alt S. So I know a lot of times when I'm editing and doing a lot of drawing, kind of I had my left thumb on Alt, and I'm drawing things. I'm forever just Alt R, Alt S, Alt R, Alt S. And for those of you that have worked with me on the phone and or in person, doing editing training and everything, yeah, you'll know that I kind of preach the save early and often. Just Alt R, Alt S, and I kind of try to go through that a lot. But with kind of as I was talking about customizing, mentioned the redraw button that many of you have, or a sync button that many of you have. And you see, I don't have a sync button because, yeah, there you do have kind of, I guess, say limited space up here. You can only have so many buttons. And if you ever try to add a button and it just won't add, that means you have, too many. You may look and, maybe there's a button that you don't really need anymore and you could remove it. So the way to do this would be under Setup at the top of your map. So I'll go Setup, Workstation Settings, and then on this menu here, the fourth tab over is the Menu tab. If I click the Menu tab, this is our toolbar buttons. And you see we have a standard and a custom. We have a top and a bottom portion. Any of the standard that, if those are just kind of always going to be there. But if there's one that you don't need, kind of like the one that I said that I don't use that much, kind of the select feature. If I come in here and just uncheck this. So take the check mark away from that button. Now when I close, that button's gone. So I actually just freed up space for another button if I had too many. If I needed to do one that's more custom, I would do Setup, Workstation Settings, Menu tab, and again, if I kind of put the check mark back, the button would come back. But down here in the customizing or the custom toolbar buttons, if I needed to add one, and whereas I mentioned like a sync button or a redraw button, what we would do is add button, and then it pulls up and says, where do you want to add this button from? And because I know that, I know that redraw was under view, and this is the main menu items up here, I'll hit main menu item and hit OK. So now these are the buttons right here, and I know that I want view, hit OK, and there's all the options under view. So if I want redraw, hit OK. This says this is what we're going to add. There's the command to run redraw. This is the default button that we have for it. If that's okay, just hit OK. So it adds that button at the bottom. Hit OK. And we now have a redraw button. So as you see, we do have something highlighted here. I can hit redraw. And it does the same thing as clear. So again, yeah, one more time quickly there. Setup, Workstation Settings, Menu, and maybe I don't need the redraw. Just click to highlight that line, remove button. Are you sure you want to remove it? Yes, I am. And it's gone. So now if I hit OK, that button will disappear. But I could also replace it, add button, main menu item, maybe under file this time. Synchronize button, synchronize files. So this is the default for sync, but maybe that's not the one that I want to use. I know that there's another one that other people have. I'll just click on this, which brings up a list of buttons. And I know like there's the helicopter. So if I didn't want the XY with the question mark, I could choose the helicopter. But I know that towards the bottom, we have an actual button that says sync. So I could click this, hit OK. So it put this in here. So now where we had redraw up here, we're basically going to swap it out. And now it says sync. And now it's a sync button. So if I click this, it's going to close my map and start synchronizing files. The other item that I mentioned was with max view, whereas you can reset that. This is, kind of it's done similarly to the way we did the buttons in that you kind of come up to setup. So if this isn't the view I want as my default, maybe I want to zoom out a little bit. Maybe I want this to be my default. I would come up to setup, and whereas to add buttons and remove buttons, previously I went to workstation settings. This time I'll go to map settings. Under map settings, again, we have quite a few options here, but one option kind of about 2/3 of the way down is max view set. So if I just click this, left click, it says you're about to change your current view, which was this view here. Say, yep. So now if I hit OK, zoom in anywhere, if I hit max view, now it zooms to that extent. And again, there are times that, if you're working in a specific area and on your map and, maybe doing editing or just this is my viewing area and I'm only going to be looking at this for a long time. Yeah, you can change that. It only changes it on your map, doesn't change it for anybody else, isn't going to affect anybody else's map. But yeah, set it to what you need. Yeah, it's all kind of with this part. This portion is total personal preference. And yeah, you could just kind of go from there. And as always, let us know if there are any questions. With that, so we'll just continue on. So it looks like we got about 12 minutes or so. And if anybody does have any questions at any time, feel free to chime in, and Leslie will get those to me. And the next option,
Jason, before we move on, it looks like
Yes.
we've got a couple minutes. Wanted to let folks know we have opened the mics. If anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask a question. It looks like we got one here. Let's see here. We might look into this one separately. I think this one is a little more in depth than we're covering.
Okay.
But anybody, if they want to have a question?
Yeah, feel free to chime in if you have a question. Yeah, for those of you that know me, just jump in. I do not mind at all. But yeah, I guess I'll keep going here with the next item. But again, chime in with any questions if you have them. Kind of what I was going to talk about next was this search bar, kind of your search window at the far right of your kind of toolbar. This is for looking up anything you need. And there are some settings that can be tweaked to make it kind of more user-friendly or work better for you. So like if I come in here and just click up there, if I do like 1, 2, it's going to start giving me suggestions. Like right here, I know that, I'm in a little town there. So if I want 12 North Jefferson Street, it's going to zoom right into it. So that kind of saves you from having to type the whole thing out. As you type, and if I do 1, 2, 3, it's going to give me options for, 1, 2, 3, and then further down, it's going to expand it out to 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 2, and just going to kind of give you the best options that it can. You can set this to kind of help you with anything that you need. And I clicked on the parcel there. The way that you kind of adjust this. So if you want it to give you search suggestions for addresses or for parcels or, whatever layer that you're going to be looking up a lot using the search window. It's actually in the layer settings. And then each layer, I'll go to base map layers here because I know that's where my addresses are. So like right here, addresses, and then all the way over, there's a column that says geocode. And if I click in here, right in this search suggestion format, this is where that is set up so that you kind of give this an idea of what you want it to look for. And some layers are set up, like if I click on subdivisions, it just says feature name. And then like here, corporate boundaries, it's not set up at all. So like if you start typing in here, it's not going to really give you any suggestions on, on corporate boundaries. But if we like go to parcels, it's like county area. This is set up, this one for kind of the Indiana 18-digit state number for each parcel. And like if I was to click here, just left click in that window, this is the setup format for this particular tool for this layer. So right now, this one is said, county, area, section, block. This is all the different portions of an 18-digit parcel number. So following this, that is why like down here, 61, 05, 36, if we were to come up here in the search window and do, 61 dash, you see it's already trying to give me suggestions because it's following that format within the search suggestions. And to, if you needed to alter that, we would just click in here. And if, we don't need tax owner name or, you would just remove that. Like we can just highlight that and hit delete. See if I can find my delete button. There it is. So now it would just remove that portion. And if you make a change to that, right below rebuild search index, and it's going to think about it for a second and just rebuild all the features. So now we just took that information out. Other options that you may have is whereas this is giving us parcel numbers and it's going to look for kind of anything that's in these kind of brackets, those are the fields. So if we wanted to maybe add something to this, but not necessarily have it look at one of the fields, we could also kind of like I'll put my cursor to the side and I may just type in parcels and hit OK. So now if I start typing, oh, well, I just didn't do what I told you needed to do. rebuild search index. So let's let it run through that. So now, we still have 61 dash. It's got all the numbers and then it has parcels at the end. We do that a lot of times just because parcels is pretty easy. You know what a parcel number is going to look like. But with some of the other layers where you may have multiple, you know, multiple features that have the same number or thing, but they're on different layers, you could always add that in just to give yourself a hint of what that layer, what that data is coming from, like which layer. So that can always be added in as a just kind of like a little hint. Like this is this, and it's on the parcel layer.
Jason, we do have a couple questions that came in.
Okay.
The first one I figured I've got a quick answer for. Someone had asked if there is like a universal standard of coordinates, say like an alarm company would use or request. As of this time, no, it's personal preference based on company, person, and whoever might be requesting. However, there is kind of a movement right now to get a universal standard set in place. And then another question we received is if someone messes around with all the settings and messes things up in the process, is there a reset button that will take them back to the default settings?
Okay. That's that's a very good question.
Good question.
Yeah. So in a lot of cases, yeah, give me a call and or give us a call. We can kind of jump in and kind of help you get things reset. With a lot of it though, like layer settings, if you were to turn things on, off, change things around, maybe add a button, remove a button. If you haven't, say, go on File and Save. If you close your map, and when it says, do you want to save, say no. And it will close the map, and then when you reopen, it should go back to the way it was. If somebody has made changes and saved, yeah, let us know, and we can kind of help you get things set back the way it was. If trying to think, if that is something that maybe happens from time to time, let us know, and what we can do. There's a couple files that are kind of in the Think GIS folder that we could always make a copy of and like basically make a backup for you so that if you came in and turns out somebody had tinkered and the buttons are changed, colors are, and you want it back the way it was, let us know and we could use those files, basically copy and replace the out of that backup that we created for you, and it would make your map look the way it used to. So yeah, so we could make a backup and say if that's something that you're kind of nervous of happening, or if you want to play around with these buttons and kind of play around with this, but are afraid of, maybe messing something up, which, yeah, I wouldn't really worry about it because, if you remove buttons or anything like that, yeah, we can help you put it back. But if you are just kind of nervous about that, feel free to give me a call and we can do a remote session. I can remote in, see your map, and we can get you a backup set up. And we can go over any questions that you have, on customizing the toolbar and anything like that as well.
Speaking of customization, we've got about 1 minute left. Do you want to cover with folks where they can customize the background of their map and the highlight colors? I know I've come across a lot of users who don't realize that that is customizable as well.
Yes. So that was setup and map settings. So where we went in here to set your max view, up at the top, we have background color, highlight color, and highlight color 2. Um, and again, a lot of people use different colors, and different colors show up differently on maps. So I have my primary highlight color as white. So anything that I click on, anything that's highlighted out here is white. Highlight color 2 is for multiple highlights. So what I mean by that is if like right here, I've clicked on a parcel and it highlights white. If I click on another parcel, that parcel highlights white, but what I previously had clicked on, the highlight is still there, but it switches to yellow. That is not the active, feature that is listed over here, or like an address point. That, now we have, this is what you previously clicked on. So that's a way to, I guess you would say, kind of help you if you're trying to find something specific and you're clicking on a lot of things, and you're like, help you keep track of, what did I click on? And I'm here, but I've already checked all of these. But if you move your cursor, like pan or anything, that kind of highlight 2 will go away. So it will stay there until you move the map or use the scroll wheel to kind of scroll in and out slightly. Then, as Leslie said, if I just go to max view, out here in the background, this is where we can do the background color. So if I hit the pull down here, these are all of the different colors. A lot of people go with black on their backgrounds. I know that was what, years ago we used that quite a bit. But now it's getting more into a kind of a lighter background with some different color kind of standards going out. But again, whatever you want the background to be, this is yeah, that's where you would change it. And it's just again, it really is personal preference. Whatever, I know I've seen some people use their background color as white. Um, that might be a little too bright for me. And if I was looking at it all day, I might get a headache. But yeah, it is complete personal preference as to what you like. And again, any questions on that at any time, let me know.
Perfect. I think now's a good time to break away for a little 10-minute break. And we will be right back.
Sounds good. Okay. Welcome back. And for those of you that are just joining, welcome. So here in the second session, we are going to be kind of talking about primarily the layer settings and the index. Yeah, we kind of left a whole session just for these two buttons because yeah, they're pretty involved, to say the least. Yeah, there's a lot going on with these, and there's a couple areas. Yeah, pay attention, be careful, and like I said in the first one, if something does happen and you make a change and it's not needed or not liked, let us know and we can help you get things reverted back. But first off, let's go to the layer settings here. So mine's kind of a pink button with the pages on it. Some people may have kind of a little button with 3 L's on it. Same button. And if you don't have a button for it at all, I believe it's setup and layer settings. Any of those will work. But we'll just click this. And I'm going to open up my layer settings. I will actually stretch this out, make it a little easier to see. So right here, we have our layer settings. And as you see down the left-hand side, all of our layers. And they are listed there. The layer order does matter. So it's kind of, I guess you would say the layer settings are in opposite order as the map. So whereas our first layer is photography, and then elevation, and then zones, sections, county boundary. Yeah, as we move down, that's actually the bottom of the map. So it would almost be like photography is the first layer put down, then elevation on top of that, then zones, sections. So where that comes into play is that, for one, photography should always be at the top because that will make sure that all of your layers and any data, addresses, center lines, parcels, utility lines, that will make sure that they're all sitting on top of the photography and that you can see them. Um, so I would venture to say that like for like a dispatch, most likely addresses will be pretty far down, if not all the way at the bottom, which will make your addresses on top of everything out on the map. So just a kind of a quick example of this, um, like where we see we have photography all the way at the top. If I was to take it and this little kind of box down the left-hand side, if I left click and hold, you can see as this blue line is where I'm going to drop it. If I drop it below addresses, so now photography is down here. If I close, everything looks the same. However, if I zoom in, photography is going to kick on and we can't see anything. If I use my scroll wheel to kind of zoom slightly or right click and hold and pan, we can see that everything's there. But the photography is drawing on top of it. So this is where that kind of comes into play. So for that reason, yeah, photography, left click and hold, pull that back to the top. Now everything is on top of the photography. So that's why I say layer order does matter. If you kind of play around with the layer settings and everything, if you ever have a situation where it looks on the map like one layer is on top of another layer and you need that reversed, just in the layer settings, if, for example, roads were on top of highways and you wanted highways on top of roads, like you would have it set like this. But if you wanted the roads on top of the highways, you would just reverse the order. And that would switch them on the map. And again, any questions on anything, let me know. So yeah, that layer order, kind of everything down the left-hand side, all of your layers, and you will notice that when we get into it, in the index is going to have it's going to mimic the layer settings. It's going to be in the exact same order. So first three columns that we have on, off, and auto. The first two, on and off, pretty easy. On you can see it, off you can't. And auto, though, is going to be just a little bit different. And I will kind of explain that with the photography because it is already set to auto. If I left click here, we get a menu over on the right hand side. And we can see on, off, auto, and it's set to auto. What we want to pay attention to is right here where it says max range. The max range on this map currently is set to 1 mile. What that means is from top to bottom, the map is constantly measuring this distance against the aerial photography or against the background. So with this particular layer being set to 1 mile, what that means is that anytime this distance is 1 mile or less, this layer turns on. Anytime this distance top to bottom on the map is greater than a mile, it turns off. So if I close the layer settings again, like if I can hit max view, this distance is now greater than a mile, so the photography turned off. And this can be done with any of the layers. And like as you see, we don't have addresses or anything on. If I start zooming in using the scroll wheel, once we hit the spots where they are set to auto, we'll see things kind of start to turn on. And once we get in close enough, there's the photography, and we also have the addresses popping up. So you can kind of have different things pop on at different levels so that it keeps it from, like if we were at max view and we just had everything turned on, you wouldn't be able to see anything. I know a lot of people will have, like at max view, if it's the full county, they may just have the county boundary roads and highways, and that's it. Maybe town boundaries. Um, and it keeps the map kind of clean and you can see where things are. Then as you zoom in, whether it's using the plus or left click and hold to drag a window, as you zoom in, you can have things turn on then. And it doesn't make everything, look kind of cluttered, and you can actually see what you're looking at. So kind of having a lot of the items set to on is not always the best. But like roads, highways, county boundary set to on, um, not a problem. And then the one that I know the other service guys would probably agree that we do get calls on periodically about slow maps, and many times it's because the aerial photography has been set to on. Whereas like if I go to max view and just keep zooming out to where I can see the whole county, if I was to turn the photography to on, we have to wait for each aerial photography tile to draw. This one's actually drawing relatively quickly. But any time that we moved, you would have to wait every time for it to redraw all that. If we zoomed in, we have to wait for it to draw, wait for it to draw. And if this is, on some machines, that may go really slow, according to the computer and maybe the size of the tiles in the aerial photography, that could go really slow. If it is just kind of tile, 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 and it's going to take forever, just hold down escape, and that will kind of kill that process of drawing to let you get into the layer settings to switch that back to auto. And you can stop that. But yeah, I would there may be, you know, there may be a time or two that you want to or need to switch your photography to on. There are times, especially like if you may be on a call with me, getting some help for printing. There are times that, when doing certain prints, we may need to switch the photography temporarily to on. But, for the most part, photography will either be off or set to auto. And again, though that can be set for any of these layers. Yeah, I just like as you see, a lot of my layers are just off. I just turn them on as needed. I always try to keep the map as simple as possible. Just just so that you see what you need to look at. What's going to help you do your job. Yeah, anything else can just it can just be too much to look at, and it kind of makes things confusing. So next over, the next three, we have our line, text, and fill. And this is where you can customize the map to look the way that you need it to look, to make it work for you. Um, First column is like line. So I'll just pick, like we can slide this to the side. So, a lot of the lines that we see out there on the map currently, like the black parcel lines. So what we'll do here is I'll just go to parcels and then the line column and just left click. So down the left-hand side or right-hand side, excuse me, we have line color, line width, and line style. And this is, again, this is where you make the map look the way that you need it to look. Um, Line color, if you didn't want the parcels to be these black lines, but you wanted them to be green, we could just left click green and you're like in 1 pixel wide, that thin line, we don't want that. We want it to be 3 pixels wide. So now it'll be green and 3 pixels. So if we see out here, we have thin black lines. If we close, now they're thick and green. And that may work well for you. Again, completely personal preference. But yeah, there could be times, again, like I mentioned with printing, there could be times that we may need to make some changes like that to get a print to come out correctly. Um, but a lot of times, like with parcels and a lot of things, yeah, you may never touch that if it's not needed. And then in some cases, I know that like with dispatches, for example, is that they may have a set way they want the map to look, and they just prefer you not to touch those. So, if that's the case, maybe don't mess with those. But yeah, turning things on and off to see things isn't going to really affect anything like that. But yeah, changing colors and line width and style and all that, that can change things around a little bit. And if it if something happens and you need help getting it reverted back, let us know. But back in here, and then the next one though was line style at the bottom. I will actually set this back to black and 1 pixel so that it was the way it was. Now down below for the line style, because as you see, we can have those lines. Default is just a solid line, but we can have dash, dotted, ones that I guess look like Morse code. But the one at the bottom with the arrows, primarily used with utilities. So if I come down to like where it says sanitary layers, and I'll turn on the sanitary mains and close. If I zoom in, we can see kind of all of the sewer lines, and we can see the arrows on those lines, and that is indicating direction of flow. So, whenever these were drawn in, that line style was set for with the arrows to show directionals, and then they were drawn in that direction. But yeah, that is just kind of one of the other options. Again, yeah, directionals primarily used with utilities, but they are available. And then the other option kind of within here, as we see, is kind of the blue, I guess say hyperlinks along the edge next to each one, line color, line width, line style. That is for classifying layers, or like by colors or by size or type. With the utilities right now, this, just as an example, this sanitary layer, this one is color coded according to the size of the main. So if there is no size put out on the map, it's blue. But if it's a 4-inch line, it's kind of this pinkish color. If it's a 6-inch line, it's purple. Um, to set any of those up, like we could just come to line width, classify. Uh, 99 times out of 100, it's going to be unique values. And we just hit next. Then it asks you, well, what field do you want to classify by? And it gives you all of the field options. And again, we could just pick main size or main material, but I'll just do size. And then next. So now here are our sizes 2, 4, 6, and 8. And it's just defaulted to 1 pixel, 2 pixel, 3 pixel, 4 pixel. If you want to adjust that, just left click and you can click on any of those and choose different, different width. Again, totally customizable. And if I'm going to unclassify that, put it back the way it was. But yeah, like right here with the classified sanitary mains, if the 6-inch being purple, if you didn't like that and you wanted it, to be a different color, just click here and say, oh, 6-inch, I want that to be dark green. And now it's dark green. If we close, those are all dark green now. So again, kind of change those around as needed, whatever's going to work best for you, whatever's going to help you. And I'll put it back the way it was. So next over, we have the text column. And, I may come to like addresses for that. With the text, like if I slide this to the side again, we can see all of the house symbols, and then just above them, like this says 670, this says 324, 360. The text color is indicated here. So like we have kind of this grayish color, and that's what color all of the labels are. Just below, we can, make it whether it's bold, italics, underline. The shadow around it can make it stand out pretty well. So like right now, it's like a light bluish color, maybe that isn't standing out, or, if we turned off the shadow and just had this light blue color, so you can't hardly see it because it's actually blending in with the house. So if we come back in and say maybe, oh, we'll make it white and bold. See, now you can see a white label, but it's really hard to see. So we'll add that black shadow around it. And that makes them stand out pretty well. So it's just, again, just different ways to customize it to make it, work best for you. And along with the kind of the label here, like where this says, again, 670, 324, if you need more information, that is controlled below in the layer format, or the label format, excuse me. So if I click here, currently this is labeling by the house field. If I wanted more information, I could just hit add field. So here's all of the fields within that address layer. So right now we have house. And if we also wanted, community or the street name, what we could do here is, let's just start this one over. I'll just delete. So now we don't even have a label. Add field, we want the street name. We also want the directional. Let's do the house number. So now it's going to kind of cram them together. So I'll come in here and add a space in between those brackets. Yeah. So now, as you see, it's Strawberry Road East 324. which makes no sense. So that's where, the order that you put those in also plays a role. So what we would do here is again come back. We might remove this one. Like I can just cut, come back to the beginning, paste, add that space back. Take this one, cut, and paste. So now it's house, direction, street. Close. That's 324 East Strawberry Road. So the order that you put those in also plays a role. And you can do this with other layers, and a lot of cases, we know that this is Strawberry Road because the road says it there. So they may, just to keep the map looking more simple, just with the house numbers, because it's Strawberry Road. So you may take this off, which may be why they didn't have the full address on there. But yeah, some places do put the full address with community. You could do the same thing with parcels. If we came up to parcels and went to text, like right now, it's just set for parcel and split. And as we see here, we don't see anything out there currently because the next option that I was going to talk about with these labels, it's a different portion, but it goes kind of hand in hand with the labels or with this text column, is all the way over here in the auto label column. So if I click here in the auto label column, I can see that the labels are turned off. So if I set those to auto, they're set at auto 1 mile and they're set for 14 pixels. Then if I come back to the text, I can see that right now it's set for the parcel number and the split number. And it should be an orange label that's bold with a black shadow around it. So if I close, there's my parcel numbers. And that's just the parcel number. Like they did not put the full 18 digit. But if they did want the full 18 digit, then yeah, you would just adjust it right here. Or maybe they just wanted, because we could hit add field, it's possible that they also, they just wanted the parcel and split number, but also the owner name. So we'll add that, but they don't want that on the same line. So I'll just hit enter and move it below. So now when we close, now it has the owner name below the parcel number. So again, the labeling and all of that is completely customizable. You can make it look the way it's going to work best for you. And here with parcels, I'll turn off the labels. We'll come back to addresses. Whereas we go back to auto label here for the addresses. The other thing to keep in mind here is this pixel, like label height. So it's set to 12, which it looks pretty good here. But if we went to like 16 pixels, and I type 12 in again, let's see if I hit my num lock so that I can type. Now if we close, those labels are bigger. So within the auto label for the label height, changing the pixel, bigger number, bigger label. And again, just whatever works for you. I'll put that back to 12 the way they had it. And again, but right below that is, for the point, like for this address point, the point is right in the middle of the symbol. They will have the label, and you can set whether the label is above the point, right through the middle of it, or below. And again, that's just to kind of help you set things up. Let's see. And Leslie, did I think there may have been a question. Is this one to chime in now, or did we need to save it to the end?
Just a couple questions. I
Sure.
think we can, at least one of them will pertain to the layer settings.
Okay.
Categorizing them. You've
Okay.
got several folders, it looks like. How do you do that, and what would you advise?
Okay. That's actually my next topic. That's right where I was heading,
Perfect.
right after the auto labels and all that. Um, well, the one last thing that I will talk about, and then I will cover um, the categorization of layers, uh, is this fill column. And this is to kind of any of like the symbols or areas that are out on the map. We can adjust this fill column to change, like with the addresses here, we could go to the fill, and right now they're set to fill with the same color as the line color. So we can so everything looks the same. If we changed it to white and then closed, now all the symbols, they still have that same kind of bluish color. You may or may not be able to see that well around the outside, but the fill in the inside of it is white. And you can also just hit none, which would turn that. Now it's just the outline of that house, or kind of the symbol with no fill. But I will put that back to the way it was. And then with parcels, for example, with the fill, this is a good way to kind of check areas. Like we have the black lines for parcels, but now with the fill, I have it set to orange, and this hopefully doesn't blind us. This is going to be really bright probably. Yeah. And as we zoom out, this turned on the fill for parcels. And this is kind of a good QC check, actually, for those doing parcels, because I can see right now where I was zoomed in, this didn't fill in. So that means there's a missing parcel there. And it's just kind of just a simple check. But you can also, whereas we mentioned classifying previously, I could classify that fill color on parcels by any of the fields, and I may do section. So next, so this is going to assign all of the sections a different color. So if I close and we start zooming out, it's going to kind of look like a quilt. But this is, again, a good check, because with all of the sections and the grids, if we had one parcel that was in the middle of one of these that's a different color, that could be an indicator of a bad parcel number, and that could make it stand out. And it's just, kind of an easy visual. And right there, that pointed that one out. We have a missing parcel right here. So again, this is just a simple way to kind of find a couple little things that need looked at or checked on. And I will turn that back off to make the map look look normal again. And in max view. Okay, so now, as Leslie mentioned the categories and how to do that. So with our layers down the left-hand side, we have, some that are, we can see the layers here, and others that are just next to like a plus or a minus. Those, the plus and the minus, those are the categories. And this is a way to, I guess you'd say, kind of condense and kind of keep the layer settings clean, so that it's kind of makes them easier to get around and everything. So if we're working with base layers, hit the plus. This is all of the layers that are within those base layers. The way to do that is, and let me pull a couple layers and see if it'll let me. Like there. I just pulled a couple layers. I basically just left clicked and pulled them below that category, but above the gas layers category. So now if I close the base layers, you can see they're not in a category anymore. If, you know, highways, addresses, and roads, I wanted those to be in their own category. Like, you know, I don't want those to be in map layers. I want, or base layers. I want them to be, we'll just say an address category. What I would do is where the addresses are, right click, then over to the right, categorize this layer. It says, what do I want the category to be called? We'll just do addresses layers. So now we have our category, and if I hit the plus, it shows that we have addresses in that category. If I wanted roads and highways to be in there with it, I would just left click and hold and drag them into that category. Can you kind of see the little line saying that this is in that category, but we'll just pull the blue line into there. That is now in the category. And then we could grab highways, pull that into that category, and then close. So again, this is just a really good way to kind of group things together, keep it clean. You can turn things, like you say, on and off, auto. You also have, with the category name, the option to turn on and off the entire category all at once. And that, again, can come in handy. Like I say, I do that with utilities a lot, to where, you know, I may, like if I turn those on, if I want to, you know, see water layers, that turned on everything in this water category. So now I can just close, and I'm looking at a water map. This has everything with the water system. But then I'm like, well, I don't necessarily need water now. I want to look at the sanitary lines. Close the water category, turn on sanitary, and now I've got all of that. So it's basically kind of a quick, easy way to completely swap your map around. And yeah, and just make it look, you know, it's almost like, you know, with this, in this case, you know, I have a sanitary layer map. Now it's a water map. Now it's an electric map. And, you know, primarily showing that information. And then again, with the layer settings, let me know if you have any questions and contact us at any time with questions on anything I went over. Real quick here, jump over to the layer settings. Like I mentioned before, layer settings, they're all listed down the left-hand side exactly the same as the layer settings, the index is. And as you see, like addresses layers, our category is there now because we added it in the layer settings. But anything that we click on, any of these layers listed down the left-hand side, any of the layers that we click on, it pulls up all of the information that is within that layer down the side. And any of the information on any of the layers is completely searchable. So for example, like on this sanitary layer, I could hit search and it pulls up a blank form. So if I wanted main size, I could hit 4-inch, search, and it found 291 features. And as you see, we scan up and down. And I usually tell people to scan up and down just to double check it. Because if, for example, there was a 14-inch, it would list that as well. And if it does that, if you have, or like a 3/4 inch, it would list that because it has a 4 in it. If it does that and you needed just 4-inch, you could add an equals. So do like equals 4. And then, like I say, we still got 291, but it would give you only information that matched exactly. But like right here, 291 features, we could hit locate all, and it's going to zoom out, and everything that is a 4-inch is highlighted kind of a thick yellow line. And another option that we have, if you were running reports or anything, would be with those options that we just pulled up, like, 291 features, which is all 4-inch, we can hit print list to a text file. Do you want statistics? Yes, I do. And pulled it up on the other screen. Let's drag this over. And then here it's just saying, hey, we're going to open a text file. Let's open it. And it opened it on the other screen again. So let's pull this over. And it pulls up all of that information for all of those 291 features, and it kind of clumps it all together. However, all the way at the bottom lets us know that there's 4.6 miles of 4-inch, or 24,299 feet. And that can be run for any of the layers. And like water, sewer, I know a lot of highway and street departments will run that for surface type. So they can run, if they have a surface type layer saying whether it's, chip and seal, or it's paved, or it's gravel, they will show those to, to get their, distances for their surface type. And one other one real quick, and then I think we got a couple questions, or I'll close this, is, as I said, any of these layers are searchable. And you could just hit, search, locate, print list, and you can, like I hit to text file and calculate statistics to get those lengths. You can also, if you do a lookup on, a group of parcels, you could send that to an Excel spreadsheet if needed. And for doing that, here, I'm going to turn off this category really quickly. Let's see, turn off. We got kind of back to our normal map, and it still has those highlighted, so I'm going to hit clear. Some other kind of lookups that you can do are for the index are not actually in the index, but just above in lookup. So if I do lookup, and a majority of the things here, the options here, are going to be the same as the tools across the top. So like, locate points for coordinates you enter is right here. Locate, coordinates for point you pick right here. But what we want for kind of some special lookups would be all the way at the bottom. And we've got list features within an area, and we have kind of a few different options, draw radius, that's used 911 situations. Maybe if there's a wreck with a chemical spill, they may need to say, I need all of the addresses. And so what layer do you want to search? We want addresses. I'll just click a point on the highway. As we move the cursor out, we can see down here how far we are from that point that I clicked. So if we said, 1,000 feet, I want to know who's 1,000 feet from this circle. There's all the addresses. And I can locate all, and there they are from the kind of the point that I clicked, what was kind of right there. The one that is the most common, though, would be just
look up, list features within an area, and draw boundary. This lets you kind of freehand an area to search. So I may choose parcels, hit OK, and I'll just kind of go around a little area here. Then right click to finish. And there's all the parcels within that area that I drew. And it was just basically like 2 blocks here. But I could hit print list, Excel spreadsheet. Do you want statistics? In this case, I don't need statistics. Hit open. And it's going to open on another screen. I'll pull this over. And there's all of that parcel data for those 18 parcels. But again, anything's searchable. There's a lot of lookups to do. And let me know any time if you're trying to run a report or any specific lookups that you just can't quite figure out how to pull the data out, but it's there. Give us a call and we can help you run those reports. And then Leslie said there's a couple questions.
Yes, first one, early on, you had said that when changing the layer settings, there's that pink layer settings button, layer menu, and that it might look different to other users with 3 Ls. Where would they go to update their buttons or change their buttons for that?
Okay, that is actually setup and workstation settings. And under the menu tab where we went to kind of add buttons and remove buttons, where we talked about that in the first session, up here at the top where it says theme, if we hit the pull down, there are a few different themes. Like if I went to classic, this is the original buttons from 20 plus years ago. And like if I zoom down, there's the 3L button. So it's kind of like the original layer settings buttons from years ago, but they have been kind of updated, over the years. So if I hit the pull down, I think I went convex, but again, total personal preference. Yeah, the buttons still do exactly the same thing. They just may look a little different.
Thank you. And then the other question we have, and I believe you may be touching on this topic with our next hour, all of the changes are only saved on the computer you are using, correct? These are not synced to other users.
They are not. They are not synced to other users. Yeah. And so if there was a case where maybe you have one computer that is set up and it looks and is set up exactly the way you like it. And I'll just use a dispatch again as an example. If you work on one of the dispatch positions and everything looks perfect, and you're like, this is what I want all of the dispatch positions to look like. Let us know once you get that set up, and you can work with us as well to get that one set up to look just the way you want it. There are a couple files that we can work with you, and basically you can copy those files out to the other maps, and then when you reopen those maps, they would look exactly like this other one. It's basically the couple files that contain the layer settings and the buttons and all that. And then if you want it to look like that and not change, we can work with you as well to kind of, I guess they kind of lock them down so that they can't be changed after that. Or you could change, on, off, auto, all that, but it can't be saved. So as soon as you close the map and reopened, it would revert back to the way that it was set before. So there are some options, but but as far as like syncing them, I wouldn't suggest it.
Alrighty. Again, we've got the floor open if anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask a question. So far, I think we're pretty well caught up in the Q&A field off to the right. So otherwise, I think we're about ready for a break.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's 10:50 now, so I think we're break time. So yeah, I guess we'll break there and we'll be back at 11 and go on to the next session of going over syncing.
Sounds good. We'll be back.
Okay. And welcome back. And again, for those of you just joining, welcome. So in the final session here, what we're going to talk about is syncing. You know, syncing, the importance of syncing, why you should sync, how it works, and yeah, all that fun stuff. I guess the first thing is, how do you sync? So right off the bat here, like earlier, we did add a sync button. Many of you may have this sync button, and I could click this or file, synchronize files. And what this will do is once I click this, it's going to say, do you want to save your changes? Sure. And it's going to close down my map. And open the sync, kind of start the sync wizard. A majority of the time, yeah, most will just kind of go next, through the windows, and it's going to download what it needs, everything. But we'll kind of go over, what each page means and what it's doing. Intro page here just kind of says, welcome, and right in the middle it says, there is an option that says I would like to change my sync settings. Odds are, if we check that, you're most likely talking to one of us, one of the service techs. That is where, like, I'll just go ahead and check it and hit next so we can see it. This is where the registration and setup is located. Yeah, and messing with this portion here could be not awesome. So, it could make it so that it can't sync, and potentially, we'd have to get back in and kind of reset a few things. But yeah, this is just kind of telling it. And for those that do, reinstallations or, or with IT and kind of work with us getting maps set up and everything. Yeah, this is basically where sync is told kind of how to work. Yeah, anything that is the program itself, this is just telling it that all those files are in the Think GIS folder. And then anything that is a layer, everything is in the county folder. But like I said, I wouldn't mess with that, unless, you're working on a reinstallation or working with us. But yeah, we will go ahead and hit next and move on. So it's going to say downloading file list. It says, so now it says it's ready to sync. So I'll go ahead and hit next. And I get this all the time because I work with so many different counties, and my kind of the group of layers that I'm looking at changes all the time. So, I have certain counties of layers that I may own the layer for editing, but it's not there right now. So it thinks it's been deleted. So I get this message all the time. If you get this message, and are curious about this, let us know, and we can take a look at your settings. But yeah, for me, this is common, but yeah, for you, it might not be. If you start getting this, let us know. So I'll hit OK. So the first page that we come to, like for me, and this is going to be if you're an editor. For those of you that are viewers or view only maps, you may not get this message at all. It'll probably skip right over this page and go straight to this is files to upload. So this is the layers that I own or my registration owns for editing. And as you see, it goes on and on and on and on and on. Because I do, yeah. I help out a lot of different places with a lot of layers. Um, so what this is telling us, though, is this is the actual file name in this column of the layer. Next over is the status column, and this tells us what the status is. And as you see, I have some that are listed as deleted. Many of them are listed as deleted because the county that I'm kind of set for currently is not one of these counties, so it thinks it's deleted, even though these files are on my machine. So the status that you'll normally see, hopefully you don't see deleted much, but you'll see current, Maverick, and modified. Those are kind of the three main ones that you'll see more often than not. What those mean, current means that in this case, because it's on the upload page, current means that I own the layer for editing, and the version of that layer is the same as what's on the sync server. So the copy of the file that's on my computer is the same as what's on the sync server. So it's listed as current, saying, it's good. They're identical. We're just marking it as current. There's no check mark or anything. If I have made a change to one of these layers, then this would be listed as modified and automatically have a check mark saying that it's going to upload this file to sync for everybody else to download. Maverick means that the copy of this file that's on your machine is newer than what is on the sync server. However, you do not own that layer for editing. So if you have been making changes to a layer, and this would actually show up on your download page, if you've been making changes to a layer and you go to sync and you don't see it on your upload page, go ahead and cancel and call us, because it basically means that within sync on our end, that your registration number is not listing you as the owner of that layer for editing. So that will move your layer here. I'll go ahead and hit next. That will move your layer to the download page where it's going to download that layer again, and it's going to overwrite. If you go ahead and sync, it's going to download that layer and overwrite everything that you changed. So that's kind of one of the things to pay attention to if you're an editor, is that if you make changes, double check these, pages to make sure that, like if you're doing a dressing and you've made changes, make sure that the addresses are listed on the upload page and listed as modified. If they show up on the download page as Maverick, go ahead and cancel out of sync right here and let us know. That, because if you sync, it's going to override everything. And, and it could be a couple different things. In some cases, there are, people that have, like a laptop and a desktop, and their desktop owns the layer for editing, but they, went ahead, they made the changes on the laptop. When they sync, it's going to say, hey, it's going to be on your download page because the desktop is the one that actually owns it. So we might have to, look into that, and we can help you out with that if that happens. But as we see right here, there's also a status of new. That means that this is a layer that, from this county that is available to me, but I haven't downloaded it. I don't have a copy of it currently. So it's not on my machine. So it's just listing it as new. And you see it automatically has a check mark saying, I'm gonna go ahead and sync that. I'm gonna bring that in. So I'm actually gonna hit unselect all. Because if I went ahead and kicked that off, that would, with this many, because I haven't downloaded most of these layers, that would take quite a while. But you see, like right here, there's a parcel layer that's listed as modified. And, so I've got one modified. I'll go ahead and check it. So it's just going to grab this one layer. So I'll hit next. And as you see, it's just going to buzz through and grab that one layer. And then once it is finished, should just take a second. A second or two. Maybe I shouldn't have chosen the parcel layer. One of the, larger of the layers available. And once it's done, which it's almost there, will give us option to, click next to finish. There we go. And finished. So now, we can open the map back up. And we're back. And, most of the time, you're now good to go. This is all there is to it, and like I said, most of the time it would, for many people, it would just be especially viewers. Like if you're view only, you're going to start sync, and then it's just kind of a next, and it's going to download what it needs. On that download page, though, you may scan up and down periodically just to make sure you don't have any Maverick files, because they may or may not download themselves automatically. So you may just take a look and, go ahead and check those and make sure that everything's up to date. Some other things to talk about with sync, and this would be primarily with editors. So if I start sync again, well, we'll just say that, like within your layer settings, that, at some point in time, you need a layer for whatever you need it for. Like this is, we have a lot of utility stuff here, but, like a layer I remember seeing previously was a layer for potholes. They actually sent somebody out with a GPS and a map to essentially document every pothole they could find in the county. And so, like, if they made a potholes layer, um, we'd have a, add layer, create layer, basic layer, and I'll just do potholes. See if I could spell pot right. There. I guess maybe the G was silent. Potholes. So now we've got a potholes layer. And I'll just go ahead and we'll do a new feature and we'll just say, I'll just call it number 1. And we'll just say that, right down here, place a point. There's a pothole right there. File and save. So if I click here, it just says this is feature 1 of potholes layer. So when it comes to syncing, I can say, oh, I just made a potholes layer. Synchronize. So it's going to, and I had already hit save, so it didn't ask me if I wanted to save, but it's going to start sync. So I would just hit next. Next to start and get my message about deleted files, which is fine in my case. So here on your upload page, because this is my layer, as we see, I can scan up and down and we will not find, like, especially if we go to the P's and everything, that should put them alphabetical. There's no potholes layer here. And this is, we've run into this, many times. When a layer is created, you can sync over and over and over, but you have to tell sync that this layer exists. So, we can sync and, it's going to go right on by just like it, I'll unselect all, next. And even though I just created that layer and it's brand new, it is still not on sync. So and there could be times, I know that myself and many other editors, we create layers all the time. Create layers, use it for a minute, delete it, and we're done. Just kind of, I create layers for, printing purposes. Just, put a boundary around something. And then once we have the print and everything's done, delete it because it's not needed anymore. But if it is something that is needed, and not only is it needed, other people may need to see this. So like this potholes layer, we'll go ahead and start sync again. Let this connect. And I'll hit next. Next, get our message. So here on the layers that I own, and again, as I'm going to go through this, but if there's, at any times, if, you have questions or, you're not totally comfortable with this or anything, by all means, call in. We will help you out with this. But right here on your upload page, all the layers that, that I own for editing, it's not there. My new potholes layer. So I'll go ahead and hit down here at the bottom. There's a button that says add upload files. So I'll click here and, it knows that I'm in this county right now. And, date modified, and here's all the files. It's actually not going to find it here either because I am connected to our server. So if I come to our server and I'm going to find that file, so I know we're in Indiana, Greene County. Okay, and I don't see it there. I thought that. Oh, let's see, because I was not in the Greene County area. See, sometimes this is part of it. I was in a different map. I was set for Greene County for my syncing, but the actual map I was in was local. And normally, it's not quite this hard because, yeah, your maps will. I've got stuff pointing all over the place because I'm, looking at so much. Montezuma. There's my potholes layer. So now if I hit OK, click on, say, there's my layer, open. And because I'm currently a member of Greene County, it's going to say, we're going to put it in this group. Now, you may have multiple options here. So, for example, if you were, if you work in a highway department, there may be, like, if I was in Greene County, there may be a Greene County group, which basically everybody in the county, looks at that group, and that would have like your addresses, parcels, roads, and everything that's kind of base map that most people within the county are looking at. But there may be, like, I'll just say Greene County, like a highway group, and they would be the only ones that need to see potholes, this new layer. So that would be listed there as well. If there's a sync group specifically for the highway department, in that case, we would just check that highway department sync group, and not the county, because we just need it to stay in the highway department. Don't need, everybody in the county, doesn't need to see it, wouldn't really mean anything to them. So yeah, just make sure it's in the right group. And then I'm not going to add this to Greene County because everybody in the county doesn't need a pothole on one layer or on one road. So I'm going to hit cancel. But if I did hit OK, we would down here, like, in all the alphabetical, down here in the P's, we would have it say potholes.tml, and it would be listed as Greene County over there because I added it to the Greene County group. And it would have a status of new, saying this is on your machine, but it's not on the sync server. We're getting ready to upload it for the first time. This is new. And then once I ran through sync and sync was finished, from then on, anybody, and in this case in Greene County, anybody that syncs their map would get a notification that a new layer is available. Would you like to add it to your map? I would, yeah, and you may see that message from time to time. I would take a look at it. So when it says, would you like to see, this new layer when you open your map after a sync, you might go ahead and hit, yeah, I'll take a look at it just to see what the layer is. If it has absolutely nothing to do with what you're working on, it could be for a completely different department that they're working on. It doesn't, you don't need it or anything. Yeah, you can just not add it to your map. It is still on your computer. So like if I I'll go ahead and bring up my File Explorer. I'm drag it over here. So if I go with my File Explorer, my Think GIS folder. So, again, most people will just have under their Think GIS like one folder. I've got like 11 bazillion of them. But, in this case, if I added it, like it would have gone to Greene County. So if I find Greene right here, that layer would be in here. And even though it's not added to my map, it is still in the C Think GIS county folder, or it may be a city folder if you're part of a city, not a county. But that's where all the layers are going to be, whether they're added to your map or not. And kind of you can kind of get into a little confusion there at times, because yeah, I've been on plenty of maps that every time a new layer is available, they just add it, whether it has anything to do with what they're doing or not. And what that ends up doing is, like, I'm going to go ahead and cancel this sync. Let's bring the map back up. Is, the map may look like this, just the way that you want it, but when you hit the layer settings, if they're not all categorized, nice, and like if we open up all these categories, as you see, we can scan up and down. But in certain locations, yeah, there are counties out there that if between, county departments, city departments, utilities, if they have access to everything, if they added everything, they could have hundreds of layers. So, and without them being categorized or anything, but just scrolling down here, you would scroll forever and ever and ever. Which is why I was like, if it's a layer for something that you're never going to need, it has nothing to do with your department or what you're working on. Yeah, you can just like right here, I'll just click on that potholes layer. I can hit remove, but keep for future use. So if I hit OK, it's gone from the layer settings, and that point is no longer there on the map. But it is still on my computer. I can add it again at any time. But, for this map, for this purpose, it's just not anything I need right now. But if it turned out that, oh, hey, where'd my potholes layer go? I can hit add layer, add an existing layer. It's going to open up, there's the potholes, put it back down there at the bottom, close, and there's that point again for a pothole. Like, so, yeah, I would say, especially if if you're an editor and it gives you the options of, like right there where I had the two options of, yes, delete it, but keep the layer for future use. That keeps it kind of in your folder in your Think GIS folder, on your machine for future use. If you hit delete, it's going to delete the layer completely. If you're an editor and it's a layer that you don't own for editing, when you hit delete, the next time you sync, it's going to re-download it and put it back on your machine. So I would just say, rule of thumb, yes, but keep for future use. If it's a layer that you created and you own it for editing, and you hit delete this layer, it's going to delete it from your machine. And at that point, because you own that layer and it's in sync, that's when you'll get that message, like mine pops up saying, you have a deleted, you have a layer with a status of deleted, because the layer is no longer on your machine, but it's still in sync. Yeah, people that create and remove, layers from time to time, may get that message saying that, and it is valid. It's a layer that's no longer needed. It's a layer that they deleted. Um, if they're getting that message, call in, talk to one of us, and we can actually, we can delete it from sync so that you no longer get that message. If you're getting that message and you look on your upload page and it's a layer with a status of deleted and it's a layer that you use, like one that you didn't want deleted, give us a call because we can grab it from sync and put it back on your machine. So that's another good reason to sync. And if you're an editor, a good reason to, add layers to sync is because they are backed up then. If, if you do everything on a laptop and laptop, bites the dust, we have a copy of the layers that are on sync. If you have created a layer and have been working on a layer and it was never added to sync, hopefully the IT can hopefully IT can get in and maybe retrieve something off the hard drive. But if it's completely dead, then that layer would be gone. There is no backup. So yeah, those things. It is good if it's a layer you're going to be working on, if it's a layer that's important, if it's not just a temporary thing that, you just need for a minute and then you're going to get rid of it. Yeah, it is always good to add it to sync. And Leslie, did you have a question?
We do. What if, hello, what if someone adds a layer to their layer menu there and it has a 1 in parentheses after it? What does that mean?
That means, so like right here, like if we had potholes and I added it again, it would put a parentheses 1 next to it. And if I added it again, it would put parentheses 2. It means it is a layer with a duplicate layer name. There are times that could be valid. Example would be if you have, a map that you're working with that maybe has a layer from a neighboring county that, your county's address layer is called addresses. The neighboring county's layer is called addresses. You would probably categorize them, like base map layers for all of our layers, and then maybe the other county's layers in their county name category. But that because both layers are named addresses, the one for the other county is going to most likely be addresses with a 1 in parentheses. It just means it's a duplicate layer name.
And what if I can't find a specific layer within the layer? Say I have a whole bunch and I am just not finding it. What's an alternative way to search within that layer settings?
Well, if you can't find it at all, right down here at the bottom, we have a search function. So like right here, if it was addresses, I could just come in here. I'll just type in address and it's going to narrow my search down or narrow my layer settings down. It's going to not show anything that doesn't have address in it. So like right here, address ranges. And it did pull up highways, roads, and addresses here because they're in an addresses category. So yeah, if you do have a map that has hundreds of layers, and there are cases like that where you have maps with multiple counties, multiple cities, all feeding layers in, and we have a ton of categories, and you just have a bazillion layers. That can come in handy because you're like, oh, I need to find such and such parcels. Well, you could just come down here type in parcel, and now it just narrows it down, and it would just give you the list of anything that has parcel in it. And like right here is we only have one parcels layer on this map, but here it is. Turn it on and you're good. And then once you're done, you can just hit clear and it restores your layer settings. Okay. Were there any other questions on that?
Not on this topic, but we do have one from a prior. Oh, just kidding. One came through.
Okay.
How can I create an attribute table from combining two layers? Example, flood zone layer and parcels layer. I'm guessing they mean classifying.
Oh, if you're going to make, I guess you would say make a layer that you're putting parcels and flood data, like copying it all into, I would say give me a call. I can work with you on that. We may need to create a layer, a new layer, um, and create all the fields in that in order to so that we can copy data in. If that's not what you mean, then yeah, let me know, and I'll be happy to have phone call with you, and we can do a remote session and kind of go over everything. But yeah.
Something else to point out for users who are new to the map, you might not have the option to create a layer. That'll be based on whether or not you are an editor or a viewer. You can add a layer, but creating a layer may not be an option. So that would depend on your
Yes.
personal settings.
Yeah.
We do have a question from earlier in the session, from an earlier hour. What happens with in the layer settings here? There's the SEL button, the select button. How would that come into play? I know I've specifically come across that with aerial photography.
Yes, and I should have covered that earlier. I meant to, but I think that's one we went a little long on time with. But yeah, column all the way over here, edit SEL. That is the selectability, um, which kind of a fun word, tongue twister for those of us with a lisp. Um, yeah, majority of the time they will be checked, kind of highlighted purple. And what that means is that it's selectable. You can click on it. Like right here, parcels. If I check the box, or I guess I uncheck it, so now that is grayed out. If I come out onto the map, I click in that parcel, it grabbed the nearest feature, which was an address. I can't click any of the parcels. They are not selectable. And Leslie, as you mentioned, photography, that is, here I'll check that again. So now if I come out, I can click on parcels. Aerial photography should always not be selectable. Yeah, I've been bitten by this myself, helping somebody edit their map and didn't realize, I guess I didn't look, that not only was the photography selectable, but it was also checked for editing. So when I went to, I did a move, drug a window to move an area, and when I moved it over, it moved everything, but it also moved the aerial photography. So yeah, I zoomed back out and there were big gaps in the photography, and yeah, I got it fixed. No worries. Yeah, it was pretty quick, easy fix, but yeah, just being, not being able to select your photography is a good thing. So I would, always recommend not having that selectable. Anything else, is you can have that checked or not. If it's something that, that's out on your map that you need to see, but would never need to click on it, like photography, you can unselect that and you should be good. Were there any other questions at the moment?
Maybe just some tool hints at the bottom of the window frame. I don't know if you want to cover on that since we were discussing the buttons within the frame.
Okay.
It's like
Yeah. As Leslie mentioned, some of the hints was like this one. If you hover over it, list all areas that contain the point you pick. That's one of the tools that you may or may not use. But if I click on that, click anywhere on the map, it's going to give me as much information as it can find. And it's every layer that has an area, parcels, corporate boundaries, townships, county boundary, everything that's there, it's going to give a list of. But as Leslie mentioned, just hovering over it kind of gives you a little hint of what it does. Some of the other tools also give you tips on how to do it or what you should do. Like for example, here I have a button that says split feature, and I made this one myself, and it just says split because we don't actually have a handy dandy button for it. So I just typed it in when I made the button and just called it split. But what this one does is primarily used in utility work. But if so I'll come back, I'll just use my potholes layer that I made earlier, lock it for editing. I'll just do a new feature and call this one number 2. And then we'll just draw a line out here. So if I click on this line that I made, it tells me this is potholes layer and this is feature number 2. And it highlights the whole thing. So if I do an Alt-R, redraw the screen, or I could have hit clear here. If I needed to split this into two different features, maybe that was a pipe size, and right now it says it's a 2-inch, but down here it's kind of the right half of it is actually 4-inch. I would do a split feature, and so now my cursor says SEL. We've initiated the process of using this tool. But all the way down here at the bottom, it's kind of telling me what I need to do. It'll kind of walk me through it. So you want to kind of take a look at the bottom whenever you're using some of the tools. Not all of the tools do this, but many of them do. But it'll kind of walk you through. So it says like right here, select a polyline to break into 2 features. So this just wants me to pick my polyline. So if I click on it, it highlighted the polyline. So now it says select a breakpoint along that polyline. So it says, where do I want to break the line? So where does it go from 2-inch to 4-inch? So I'll just click just somewhere in the middle. And now it's done. So if I hit clear, it doesn't really look like it did much. However, if I click on the feature, now it says 2, and there it also says 2. But it split it into 2 separate features. So I can double click this one and say, that's not a 2-inch, that's a 4-inch. And hit clear. So now that's a 2, that's a 4. So we split one feature into 2 so that we could rename or change an attribute on one of them. But yeah, as you mentioned, like down along the bottom, kind of in the frame, many of the tools will have a kind of a walkthrough. They'll kind of tell you what to do.
Sounds good. And of course, we'll cover more of that in our editing webinar.
Yes.
One of the things that is a new feature, per the most recent update, there for a little bit there at the bottom of your screen, there was an orange bar. Can you explain what that is about?
Yeah, see, I synced, so um, I don't have anything. So when syncing, or if you see an orange button down here, and it'll stick out like a sore thumb, and it may say updates available. What that means is that if we go to sync, say yes, and say mine again may be slightly different because I'm parts of many groups. It seems like a majority of the time mine does say updates available, but like along here, mine are all either current or with the deleted. So I don't have anything to update. If, and then over here on the next page, um, the ones that are new, yeah, they're not really. When I had the parcels layer that was listed as modified, that's when at the bottom of my map it said updates available in the orange button. But I downloaded it, so it has gone away. If you do have that updates available, you might go ahead and sync, and you may have modified or Maverick files listed there. And I have, if you, I mentioned earlier that, on occasion you may have like maybe a program file or one of the layers or something that is a Maverick, but it doesn't automatically checkmark itself to be downloaded. If you manually check that, and then which makes everything on your download page go to current, then that orange updates button will go away. And then as soon as somebody else out in the county maybe updates a parcel or an address or anything like that, that would mean that you know on your downloads layer or page, it now says modified. So that button's going to pop up on your map. And people do update constantly. So you may get that orange button pop up quite often. But I would venture to say, sync as often as you can. It keeps everything up to date. Make sure that you're looking at current data. Um, I know because I'm an editor and I, do a lot, I sync daily. Most editors, I would imagine, sync daily. And again, just to make sure that, anything that they've worked on or updated is on sync for everybody else to see, and it's backed up. Because yeah, anything that you've done that hasn't been synced and it's just on your machine, if there, hopefully there's, don't experience this, but I know a lot of places have like a lightning strike that hits a building, you know, somehow finds its way through and zaps a computer. If it was your computer that got zapped, and you hadn't synced and the machine's fried, yeah, anything that, we can restore your map and get it back to the last save point, which is like where you synced last, and we can restore that. So there may be some things you have to redo, which would be why I would say, sync often. And like I said, especially, for anyone looking, at addresses, if there's a lot of addresses going in, lots of changes, it just ensures that you're looking at the most current data.
Good deal. We do have another question, and then I think we'll open the floor for if anybody wants to unmute themselves. When working with aerial photography, and navigating through the map, I know some counties kind of get bogged down with the files being so big. How can you toggle on and off the aerial photography with a shortcut?
Okay, let me cancel this. Let's go back to the map. Okay, so let's zoom in. Let's see. Oop. So with the layer settings, so this particular county, like, I currently only have one set of photography and like elevation. They actually have elevation data. I know whenever I'm editing, a majority of the time I have the photography turned off. So I kind of look at the map like if I was doing parcel work, for example, I may be looking at it like this. And because photography is the first layer coming down, that would line up with number one on your keyboard. Not on the number pad, but kind of across the top. So kind of upper left-hand corner. So if I hit number one, that's going to turn on my photography. And it's going to turn it on until I move the mouse. If I pan or anything. So if I'm zooming in here and I'm like doing some work, I could hit number one and it's going to pull up the photography. But as soon as I pan or zoom in, zoom out, it's off. So it's kind of a way to temporarily turn it on. But if you have multiple layers of photography, like maybe you have the current, like maybe you have 2026 photography already, and then your previous was 2023, and before that you had 2020. If you have all of those on your map, then you can, with them turned off, if they were, 1, 2, and 3 in your layer settings at the top, then you could hit number one to see this one, the number two to see the next one, and number three to see the next one. So you can, I know, like as far as assessors' offices and everything, you can see buildings pop up and go away, and subdivisions are there, and where it was just woods. And but like right here, their second one is uh, elevation data, so I can just kind of looks crazy, but yeah, so just an example, I can hit number one for photography, two for elevation. If we zoom out a little farther, you can kind of, you know, you see the river and the elevation changes there. But yeah, number one, number two. But hopefully that answers the question.
Yes, it does. Thank you. I believe we're caught up with the questions. I think we'll open the floor. If anybody wants to unmute their mics, ask some questions. Doesn't necessarily have to be sync related. It could be about anything we've covered here today. And if you don't want to unmute your mic, feel free to type in the Q&A tab, and we'll be on the lookout for anything coming in.
Well, I guess if we don't have any questions at the moment, I think that should about wrap it up. But yeah, if anybody has any questions over anything I went over today or anything I didn't go over, uh, by all means, feel free to contact us, and either myself or anybody in service will be happy to help.
And if, we did get a question earlier that seemed to pertain to a special project. If you do have a special project within your county, reach out to us, because we may have already done some work in a neighboring county or another county that might be structured similarly that we could pull from. We did just have a question come through, and it is loading, so bear with me.
Sure.
Oh, it's taking its sweet time. It's just loading. I'm going to close out the Q&A and I will pop it back open and see if it will refresh. Technology is great when it works.
Absolutely.
I got nothing. I got nothing now. The whole
Okay.
Q&A disappeared. I don't know, Jason, if you can open your Q&A and if it'll load for you. It is completely gone now. Okay.
Yeah.
Nope.
No.
Just a comment. It finally loaded. It was a comment, not a question. So I think we are good to go, unless there's anything else you can think of you'd like to cover, Jason.
No, I think I covered everything that I had. But as I said,
Okay.
yeah, anybody
Yeah.
has anything, just let us know.
Yes. Well, thank you for going over the information to help users become more familiar with features that we have to offer here at WTH. Just a friendly reminder then to watch for the email with the survey link and the recording of what we learned here in today's session. As always, any input and feedback is greatly appreciated. You can review on our website by navigating back to the registration page, where that link will soon be turned into a view link, and the video will soon be posted. If for some reason your company's firewall doesn't allow the email to come through, feel free to reach out to a WTH staff member and we can send you the links directly. Thank you for joining us today in our first extended webinar session. We hope you've learned a lot and enjoyed the topics we've covered here today, and hopefully we will see you in future sessions. Thank you from your friends here at WTH Technology.